Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be my team selection for Game Week 8, and I did discuss my transfer plans last week in that specific podcast, but there are a few possible transfers I could make which I haven't delved into in that particular video, and it all depends on the injury updates we get over the next couple of days. I'll provide a very brief review of how I did in Game Week 7, as the full review is also located in that transfer plans podcast last week, so be sure to check that out for all the details. But let's get straight into this podcast. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, our aim is to get this video to 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Check out the deadline stream this weekend. The reaction stream will also be on either Saturday or Sunday, most likely the Saturday, but I'll keep you updated. And the same goes for your fantasy content, the best wildcard and limitless teams alongside the team selection. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. It was a disappointing week for me in Game Week 7, only getting 53 points. It did mean a small green arrow, but if I only made one free transfer, I would have kept Trent Alexander-Arnold and bought Jared Bowen instead of Cole Palmer, so that would have resulted in a lot more points in Game Week 7. Maybe in the long term, this is the right course of action to buy Vandenberg as an enabler for Cole Palmer in the midfield, but the timing might have been a little bit off, of course, with Liverpool keeping a clean sheet against Crystal Palace away and Jared Bowen doing really well against Ipswich Town with a goal and an assist. But I do like having Palmer in the long term, so not many regrets about this particular decision, but my defensive line is certainly weaker now than it was a couple of weeks ago. I've got Vandenberg and Greaves, two 4 million defenders. I've also got Mikalenko, who's always an injury doubt, and Everton haven't kept a single clean sheet so far this season with Mikalenko in the side. Rico Lewis is a rotation risk, so Gabriel's the only reliable defender I essentially have in the long term, and I've got this double up with David Raya when they face the likes of Liverpool at home, Chelsea and Newcastle away in the next 4 game weeks. But overall, I went up to 1.3 million from around 1.6 million, and the last couple of weeks haven't been great, and all my momentum from before the first international break was pretty much put to a halt, and I started going down the ranks from Game Week 4 once I started making transfers and played the wildcard in Game Week 6. So maybe the moral of the story is to not really tinker too much with my squad, and I'll do better in the long term. But let's head over to my Game Week 8 team selection and start off with the goalkeeper and discuss possible transfers I could make. It's about time that Arsenal keep a clean sheet in the Premier League. A lot of people would have wildcarded Raya and an Arsenal defender like Gabriel around Game Week 6, and there were no clean sheets kept in that time frame, facing Leicester City and Southampton at home, where you would have expected one clean sheet on paper, but there is this trend over the last 3 years of Arsenal keeping more clean sheets on their away games and on their travels compared to home matches at the Emirates, where they score more goals, create more chances, but are also more vulnerable in terms of the counter-attack, and they concede many more chances in the process. I still think David Raya has a good chance of a clean sheet against Bournemouth away, and last season, Arsenal beat them 4-0 at the Vitality Stadium and also 3-0 at the Emirates, although they were a bit fortunate to do so in the home match. But let's see what David Raya can produce against Bournemouth away after a very impressive international break with Spain, keeping 2 clean sheets for his country. If all of my defenders are fit, I think it looks pretty good for Game Week 8 with Rico Lewis away to Wolves. Now, will he start the game? There is no guarantee, and even if he does, there is the chance that he's benched against Southampton at home with the Champions League in between those 2 fixtures. So expect a lot of rotation from teams like Man City, who have the depth, maybe not in terms of quantity, but they've got quality players who can play multiple positions, and Rico Lewis is one of them. If you go for this player, always ensure you've got backups in the defensive line, with your 4th or 5th options being able to come off the bench and deliver something for you with a good fixture, or perhaps they've got a bit of attacking potential about them. 8-Nuri would be one such example from Game Week 9 and beyond, who could rotate very well with Rico Lewis if needed. My second defender would be Gabriel away to Bournemouth, another one who's been very underwhelming since buying him on the wildcard. Just before that, he scored against Tottenham and Man City away from home in back-to-back games, and if he can do something similar over the next 4 game weeks, that would be more than welcome. And I could see a scenario where a lot of people bench him against Newcastle or Chelsea, perhaps even Liverpool, and Gabriel produces a return either from a clean sheet or by scoring a goal, because from set pieces, I don't think anybody is better in the Premier League. He is such a menace in aerial situations, and Arsenal have the best set-piece deliveries in England and definitely up there amongst Europe's top 5 divisions. The final defender would be Mikalenko if he's fit against Ipswich Town away. I'm not that confident of a clean sheet. If it was at Goodison Park, then maybe I'd be a bit more confident. But Ipswich Town are scoring a lot of goals and creating chances, but they're also leaking a lot of opportunities at the back. So with Mykolenko, I'm not really expecting too much from him. My alternative would be Jacob Greaves in this direct clash between Ipswich Town and Everton. So when push comes to shove, I might switch this and go for Jacob Greaves as my third defender. He might not be in my thoughts for the captaincy this week, but Cole Palmer is definitely worth holding on to for the long term, and I also like his fixtures against Man United and Newcastle. He is definitely captainable in those games. Against Liverpool and Arsenal over the next four, I probably would avoid him for the captaincy, but that doesn't mean he can't produce a return. It might just be a goal or an assist, but even with that, could come some bonus points along the way, like he did against Nottingham Forest, despite being booked in Game Week 7. So I'm very confident in Cole Palmer, so he is definitely a hold for me, and I wouldn't be looking to bench him. Whatever you do with Palmer, just keep him in your team and start him. You can obviously go against him for the captaincy in Game Week 8, but you could definitely look towards him against Newcastle and Manchester United. Next up would be Bukayo Saka, who is still yellow flagged in FPL, but Lee Carsley, the England interim manager at the time, said that Saka was close to making it against Finland and he could have played, but they decided not to risk it. So based on that information and update, you would suspect that Saka will be available against Bournemouth away on Saturday afternoon, but let's wait and see if Arteta gives any updates in the press conference. But spoiler alert, I probably wouldn't rely on him for injury updates. If he says one thing, it probably will turn out to be the other, like has been the case with Saka in the last year or so. Whenever he says Saka is in contention to play, he ends up missing out, and vice versa. If it goes the other way around, he'll end up playing regardless. So with Saka, I'm very confident he'll play. The same goes for Martinelli and Havertz, who are also yellow flagged. I'm more unsure about Jurriën Timber, and let's see if he can play against Bournemouth. He's very important to Arsenal with his versatility, playing on both flanks and also in central defence. And you've also got a few others there, like Tomiyasu, who might be out for another month. But the most important FPL-wise for me is Bukayo Saka, and he's definitely worth holding on to, despite Arsenal facing Liverpool, Newcastle and Chelsea over the next 4 game weeks. My third midfielder would be Morgan Rogers, probably the weakest part of my starting 11, facing Fulham away. He has put in some great performances for Aston Villa this season in the Champions League and Premier League, but he doesn't really return enough or as consistently as you would like. But he is a 5.2 million midfielder after all, and he's definitely worth the money. And despite Aston Villa having some tougher fixtures over the next 5 game weeks, he is worth holding on to at this price point. But you've got plenty of alternatives like McNeil. If you can stretch to him, I'd highly recommend that as a transfer for the next month, pretty much until December, where Everton still have great fixtures until Game Week 14. And finally, Mbeumo might face Man United away, which looks tough on the fixture difficulty rating, but I don't think it's a tough game for the Brentford attackers, and Mbeumo's on penalties, great underlying stats. He's the best mid-price midfielder in the game right now, and with Brentford having a great fixture run, I think Mbeumo is almost a must-have. I'm back to playing a 3-4-3, and that's where some of my best FPL points and ranks have come from. Solanke would be facing West Ham in the early kickoff, so there is this kind of debate about the early captaincy curse with Gandhi and all this stuff. I don't really believe it, but I wouldn't go so far as to captain Solanke, despite the fact that West Ham have looked terrible defensively this season. If you don't have Erling Haaland, you could go against him with a Brennan Johnson or Solanke with the armband, but I'd probably look elsewhere. Even Saka, if he's fit, would be a better option on paper, but you just never know. West Ham versus Spurs could be high scoring. It was West Ham, though, that won this game last season at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but Solanke has scored in 3 consecutive games, or produced returns at least, in the Premier League, with an assist against Brighton and goals against Brentford and Manchester United. So I do like his consistency, but I need more bonus points from Solanke. Even if he only gets 1 attack in return, I want that ability to get 1 or 2 bonus points with just that 1 goal or assist, and that would kind of cement him as a great forward in FPL this season. My second option would be none other than Erling Haaland facing Wolves away and Southampton at home over the next 2. You have 2 massive triple captaincy opportunities here, and there are some pros and cons for each fixture. Now with Southampton at home, that being a fixture at the Etihad, I'd probably favour that a little bit more, and Southampton and Wolves both have the same expected goals conceded figure of 13.6 so far this season, right down there amongst the worst in the division. Only Ipswich Town are actually lower than them in that particular metric, but I think with Erling Haaland, I'd rather captain him with the home game against Southampton, because Wolves can come up with a surprise at the Molineux. They did it last season, beating Manchester City, who didn't have Rodri at the time, and that will be the case for the remainder of this season. But if you do wait a little bit until Game Week 9 for the triple captaincy, there is the possibility of rotation. You've got the Carabao Cup a few days afterwards against Tottenham Hotspur, and just days before, you've got another Champions League tie at home for Manchester City, which is an easy game on paper for them, but there is going to be rotation, and Erling Haaland might have his minutes managed, and I think the most likely scenario is that he plays more minutes against Wolves compared to Southampton. But that's only one possible way of looking at it. I think if he gets similar minutes in both, and that means 70 plus, I think he'll score more goals against Southampton. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And finally, Chris Wood has this pattern of scoring, blanking, scoring, blanking. Hopefully he can break this trend and score in Game Week 8 against Crystal Palace at home, who are winless so far this season, and Nottingham Forest have been very impressive, one of the surprise packages of this new campaign, and Chris Wood has been so impressive. He gets a goal and 2 or 3 bonus points along the way. If Solanke can match that, I'd be very happy with this front line. Let's also discuss the bench and the captaincy. I've got Valdimarsson, Semenyo, Greaves and Van den Berg. In that order, I don't think I'll change that too much. My only real benching dilemma would be Greaves versus Mikalenko, but I will show you, using fpl.team, some possible transfers I could make, and one of them would be a Mikalenko replacement, as I've only got 0.3 million in the bank, and the other one would be a replacement for Semenyo, and then starting this player over Rodgers, as I'll show you very soon. If you've got any preferences or thoughts about that, then once again, let me know down the comment section below. But in terms of the captaincy, I think Erling Haaland is a very easy one this week on paper, with Saka as the vice, but football is not played on paper or behind calculators. It is played on the pitch, and sometimes you get these surprises. I wouldn't really be too shocked if Saka outscored Haaland this week, but I think the goal-scoring potential, I could see Haaland getting 2 or 3 goals, and with Saka, probably the 1 goal and maybe an assist against Bournemouth. I don't think it'll be as easy as the last 2 visits to the Vitality Stadium, where Arsenal won 3-0 2 seasons ago and 4-0 the last time out. I think it'll be a bit closer. It might be cagey. I could see a 1 or 2-0 victory for Arsenal, and I certainly hope so, with the double Arsenal defence in Raya and Gabriel. Now with Palmer, he's definitely going to be a captaincy consideration for me in Game Weeks 9 and 10, but with Haaland facing Southampton at home, I can't see myself going beyond the Norwegian robot over the next 2 game weeks, but I'm happy to challenge him beyond that, as Man City have 3 away matches over the next 4 game weeks, but against Wolves away, I just can't really see Wolves putting up too much of a fight as they have done in previous years against Manchester City in their home turf. So that is my captaincy plan at the moment. If you've got something different, then let me know, because sometimes going against the grain and doing something different is rewarded in FPL, and it's all about a matter of timing and getting things right, choosing your battles and picking the right time to go against the likes of Erling Haaland for the captaincy, or maybe to have him in your team. But if you are wildcarding this week, I wouldn't go without Erling Haaland. I think Manchester City could score 5 or 6 goals over the next 2 game weeks, with Erling Haaland being heavily involved. Let's now head over to Drafthound to see what they're suggesting for my transfers. Check out all the links in the description below, including Drafthound. For as low as £2 per week, you gain access to so many great tools. My personal favourite is the player rankings, but what you can see on screen is the transfer suggestions for my squad. Semenyo to Kovacic is their top recommendation, Solanke to Welbeck is second, and then Rodgers to Buonanotte is third. I do like that third option actually. Buonanotte could be a very good differential. He didn't play a single minute for Argentina in the international break, but for Leicester City, he's doing a great job either in central positions or on the right-hand side like he did against Bournemouth. But I think Semenyo being sold is a good idea, but I wouldn't go to Kovacic personally, and I'll be showing you in the fpl.team section, the website, what I'm looking to do if I were to make a transfer in the midfield and, of course, the defensive line, like I mentioned earlier. But I definitely think my weakest part of my team is my defense, so I could see myself making a transfer in this position in the upcoming weeks. But unfortunately, I don't have enough money to upgrade one of Greaves or Van den Berg to a 4.5 million defender. So if I were to make a transfer this week in the defense, it would be Mikalenko making way. And in terms of the optimization tool, they recommend Chris Wood and Greaves in my starting 11, with Solanke dropping to the bench, as well as Mikalenko. So 2 changes to what I proposed in my team selection portion of this podcast, but the captaincy is exactly the same, with Haaland with the armband and Saka with the vice. I completely agree in that front, and the expected points is 61.3, the average minutes is 77, and also the ownership is 22%. Not too shabby, but I'd like to reduce the average ownership percentage and also increase the expected minutes and expected points. But let's now head over to fpl.team to visualize some different transfer plans. If all goes well, I'd like to roll the transfer this week because I've only got one available and 0.3 million. I've left myself in a position where I can't really be too flexible or open-minded in Game Week 8, and I need to save up if possible. But if I have some transfers to make or maybe some issues that arise, I would be looking at McNeil in for Semenyo and Rodgers would drop down to the bench. This would be kind of an aggressive transfer, but FPL.team do like the look of it as the expected points does rise up to 63.8, and I've got 0.2 million in the bank after making this move of Semenyo out to McNeil. I love those fixtures for Everton up until Game Week 14 in early December. So this looks really strong, but it all depends on if Mikalenko's fit. Is Saka going to be ruled out? I don't think that'll be the case, but there's always that possibility. And if that does happen, it might be Saka dropping down to the bench and Rodgers coming on, or I'd sell Saka to Foden and keep Semenyo and start Rodgers instead. So that's another possibility for my team, but the alternative is to sell Mikalenko to Milenkovic or Aina, just anyone around 4.5 to 4.6 million, and it would have been Mazraoui had he not been ruled out for the next couple of weeks, and it possibly could be 2 months, but there are some positive updates coming out in the last couple of days regarding him, and hopefully he recovers very soon. But Van der Ven would be another option with Spurs' great fixture run. Even though they've got Man City in Game Week 12 away from home, Van der Ven would definitely be benched. I'd still see myself starting him in a lot of game weeks coming up, should I bring him in. I'm just not a big fan of Spurs defensively. You could say the same thing about Man United, that's fair enough, but I think United will keep more clean sheets than Spurs this season. It's just going to be in certain games where United get battered by the best teams in the country, as we've seen already against the likes of Liverpool. But Milenkovic or Aina would be a nice transfer, but ultimately it doesn't solve my defensive issues too much because I've still got Greaves and Vandenberg. Ideally, I'd upgrade one of these to a more attacking option or somebody who could get more clean sheets despite Ipswich Town and Brentford having great fixtures. The captaincy in Game Week 9 would look very similar, but instead of Saka, I think I'd be looking at Cole Palmer for the vice-captaincy, looking ahead to Game Week 9, but it's all about Game Week 8 at the moment. I showed you a preview of Game Week 9 in the Transfer Plans podcast last week, so be sure to check that out. But ultimately, I love to roll this week and then have 2 free transfers available for Game Week 9 to give me more flexibility, and sometimes rolling is the best course of action and not tinkering too much with your FPL team. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Our aim is to get this video to over 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It'd go a long way to support my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 8 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.